All right, hello and welcome to the 401 podcast with Joe Steele. I am your host, Joe Steele. I'm going to start by saying I am recording in a different place due to the pandemic, so if this doesn't sound very good, I do apologize. The first person I am going to be reading again, I do poetry. I read poetry and kind of break it down, give my thoughts on it, and share some things about the poet in question. This first poet is a very good friend of mine. She is an amazing artist. She has an account on Instagram. It's at Dreadful Artist. Her name is Heather. She also goes by Nugget. She is one of the most giving people I've ever met. She has three wonderful children. A little bit more about her. She started and operated and worked diligently on a charitable auction page for the wildfires in Australia, which I was proud to be a part of. She raised, through the community and other poets and artists, a lot of money for that charity, which was great. As I already said, she's a highly skilled artist in many disciplines, to be quite honest. She's not just a poet. Her spoken words are great, and her art, painting, drawing, whatever it may be, is incredible. She is just one of my favorite people that I've met and one of my very good friends that I've met on Instagram. She also does live reads and curates for a panoply of poetry with a few other people within that page. She co-hosts with at White Stag Poetry. And again, that account is at APANOPLY of Poetry. She also co-hosts Unsubtle Poets with White Stag as well. And she reads on Saturdays from her account, which has been moved to her new account. It's a new platform account featuring, it's kind of geared towards a specific type of poem or art. Usually the horror and dark art, which I think is a great idea. I've talked to her about collaborating with one of my pages, and hopefully we can get that done. But that account is at dreadful.divinations. A little more about Heather. It is a true individual. I'm grateful to have met her. And her quote and a quote she had in her highlights really jumped out at me. And it said, and I know it's not hers originally, or I don't think it is, "When you can't look on the bright side, I will sit with you in the dark." And that says a lot about a person and how they feel about people and their friends. And she is just a true friend, a true person, and an absolute pleasure to have known. So I'm going to go ahead and get reading. I'm going to jump right into this. I do have notes here in front of me, so you might hear a page turn. And again, if you hear a background noise, I do apologize. But with this going on, I'm kind of limited as to where I can record right now because my house is full of kids at the time. Schools are closed. So anyway, back to Heather, which is dreadful_artist. And this is called Ascension to Madness. Writhing, despising, anxiously slithering in disdain. Irritated alabaster blushing to a bleed. Finger digging deeper, pushing poison free. Will the banshee's wail ever recede? Reprieve for the slow bleed of the ugly honesty still tethered to this weathered product packaging. Dripping digits dithered down, collapsing clock, tick after talk after talk. Make it stop. Deafen my ears to the rhythm torment track, clinging with a vulgar contemptuousness to my weary subservient back. Tap, 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 tapping out fantastical absurdities in code on cringing neck. It bruises you into believing no way out, no turning back. Scaling the crumbling cliff's foot slip, heart knocking on death's door, thunderous roars rumble, projector tumbles, home movie memories flicker, burn, dissolve, nudged out of the way to be forgotten. Harness begins to fray. Do I accept my fate, graciously releasing the world's cumbersome weight? Do I wait, counting the sound of each snapping thread, before final gasp at gravity's surround? And that was Heather at Dreadful Artist. Once again, a great poet, very, very good with the visual depictions, which makes total sense because she's a true artist. A little bit about this piece for me, and again, I can only speak from my own perspective. It's ascension to madness, writhing, despising, anxiously slithering in disdain, irritated alabaster blushing to a bleed, finger digging deeper, pushing poison free. That's the first stanza, and that first stanza really guides you in the imagery. It's showing you, it's asking you, it's showing you the frustration, and it's just so deep. It's literally digging its nails into your skin, like you can feel it, and you just want to get let it loose, like it's just under your skin and in your skin, and you like it's like the nails are digging in, even if it's not literally. You can you want to dig in just to release that, but you know there's really no way to release it, at least not through that way. But it is hard. The next one, will the banshee's wail ever recede? Reprieve for the slow bleed of the ugly honesty, still tethered to this weathered product packaging. And it's like, it's the voices that you hear in your head, maybe not literally, like, you know, the thoughts you have, you're just waiting for reprieve from that slow bleed, that ugly honesty, them things that you hear about yourself in your own head. To you, it's honesty. Even if it's not honesty seen by other people, you see yourself a certain way, and that honesty just sticks. And it says still tethered to this weathered product packaging. Like, so the inside and the outside aren't always even matching in that way. Like, you're just beat up so bad and you're just tired and you just need everything to stop for a second, and you're wondering, will it ever stop? And then the next stanza, a little longer. Dripping digits do their down collapsing clock tick after time. It's, to me, time. Time to, like, it's just like you're just waiting and waiting. Like, you're ever going to get there to that place of peace within oneself, and then make it stop. Like, you're just begging for it to stop. Deafen my ears to the rhythm of torment track, clinging with a vulgar contemptuousness to my weary, subservient back. Like, you're just carrying all of this, and it's just weighing so heavy on you. And you're just like, it's almost like you're just sitting there just tapping. And it even says tap, 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 tapping out fantastical absurdities. Like, your mind starts to like play tricks on you, and you start to like think these things that just to distract yourself almost. And then it says it bruises you into believing no way out, no turning back. It's just beating you up, and you feel like sometimes there's no way out, there's no turning back, and scaling the crumbling cliffs. Like, you're just trying to climb up out of this. You're trying to find a way out of it. You're looking up. I even just looked up as I was thinking this and saying this, and it's just like really, it really just jumps out at me. And then home movie memories flicker, burn, dissolve, nudged out of the way to be forgotten. Harness begins to fray. Do I accept my fate? To me, there, it's like you're just replaying all these things that happened to you in your life and in your past, and those memories are just running through you. And again, imagery is incredible there, and the weight of it, the weight of your memories, because you know you're not always proud of your past. I know I'm not, and it's just an incredible way to write a piece and kind of push that vision in a different way. And in the last part, counting the sound of each snapping thread before final gasp at gravity's surround. It's like you're just hanging on, you're clinging, and you can feel yourself breaking in each thread. You know, that to me, it's almost literal and metaphorical in the same way. Like, you're hanging on, and you're counting each sound, like you're just waiting. It's almost like if you're just waiting for it to finally just break, and everything breaks, and everything falls down to earth, and gravity just takes over, and everything's out, and you're done with all the pain, the hurt, the negative thoughts, whatever the case may be for the person involved. And again, I'm speaking for myself on this piece, but Heather is an incredible person, and her art is available for purchase. You can find it on her website or on her Instagram page, and I'm pretty sure there's a link there. You can find a way to purchase anything she has up for sale. But do check her out. Check out her page, her account, and everything she does, because what she does is incredible. And I think sometimes we all forget that about ourselves, that what we give to other people and what we do is it's forgotten, or you feel like it's forgotten, but it's not. And I do appreciate Heather quite a bit as a friend, as a person, as an artist, and I thank her for letting me read her on this podcast and feature her work. So anyway, that was at Dreadful Artist. She can be found on Instagram at that handle. The next person I have up, his name is Preston, and he goes by at Touchstone1. He is a poet out of Wisconsin. He also has an account at Fred E. Freeloader. He just recently started, but the man is a genius. He writes so well and so quickly. It's incredible. And he calls it the Jazz Slides, or Sides, and his poetry speaks for itself. He recognizes the truth of Black America, of our history, Black history, American history. And the first piece I'm going to be reading, I'm going to read it and I'll say a few things about it. I'm not going to dig too deep into his poetry because it speaks for itself to me, and I love that about his poetry. And each poet to me is different, and I interpret it different. But his poetry, it speaks for itself, and I'll speak a little bit on it. But this is a subject that he is well versed in, and anyway, it's societal and social issues, which I absolutely adore about poetry and people who write like this. It's some of my favorite stuff. So I'm going to get on with the first one I'm reading from, and I'm going to read a couple. This is called The N-Word. Some say, how absurd that we would choose to take ownership of a word so profane and disrespectful to address ourselves. Ignorance or perversion of its own original intention. In Portuguese, negro, Spanish for black, from the Latin nigrum, akin to night, Niger, embedded in the root north of Niger, like the river raging south of Nigeria, West Africa, homeland, country, lineage, images of slave castles and slave ships, those who enslaved, corrupting the language, substituting vowels, infusing negative connotations, spewing hatred, deconstructing our worth. Never mind the notions of antiquated misnomers, not colored or Negro, uppercase or lowered, noxious nomenclature of names thrust upon us, tragic nostalgia repeated as nauseum, a longing for them good old days, neither, never, nor not now, or ever, nowhere near me. I am not that, nor will I be. Hear me. Turn the page, please. Knowledge is power. Let's take it back when black was honorable and sacred, natural, Nubian, antediluvian, NGR, emanating out of mouths of antiquity, a representation of God, derivative of divinity. Perhaps someday it can be that again. And as I'm reading this, I got a notification that he had just posted something on Fred E. Freeloader. That's great. I love that account. But back to this piece, it does speak for itself. It can be found at his account. It is the N-word. I grew up in communities personally that were very diverse. In some cases, I was one of very few, if only, white people around them. As far as kids go, my mom is a white woman, my dad is Hispanic, and my sister is white and Hispanic as well, but she looks more Hispanic than I do. So I grew up in that area, and I know from a perspective, a different perspective, obviously, because I am a white male, but from a different perspective, I do know the struggles that go on, and I do recognize them, and I do not ignore them, and I never will. That is just not my way. In this piece, the M-word, it is an interesting and thought-provoking way of acknowledging the word and its many meanings. And for me to offer thoughts, I really can't, because I can't possibly know what it means to be a black man in the world today, or ever really, especially in America. I just felt that this piece, it just really, really needed to be shared. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on that and share that piece. I do have another one from him. This piece is If Martin Were Here. Again, another great piece on societal issues. Excuse me. So anyway, I'm going to get right into it because, like I said, his pieces speak for themselves. I love the flow and the way they read, and I hope I'm doing them at least some justice to the people out there. So here goes. This is If Martin Were Here from at Touchstone1, which is Preston. We've gone from I have a dream to I can't breathe. I wonder what Dr. King would think if he were here today. Are we any closer to those promised land promises, that idyllic utopia where content of character supersedes color? Scaling mountaintops, still insurmountable, but we press on in homage to those who laid the groundwork. Ellis Island was always an illusion. Lady Liberty never opened her arms to me nor asked for my tired or hungry. I was stolen against my will, captivity my ticket across the ocean, and now that I'm here, you don't want what to do with me. The question of us unaddressed, so I look to the clouds for the next Martin Medgar or Malcolm, praying for another with heart of a lion, because to bless us and take us where Martin imagined. And that was, and I added a word because in there I shouldn't have, but that was a really, really powerful piece from Touchstone_1. If Martin were here, and again, it speaks for itself. From that first line jumped out at me, from Dr. King to I can't breathe, which I know people would recognize that statement more than the man's name, but I am going to say his name. I do know his name. His name is Eric Garner. And Eric Garner was sadly killed by a police officer because he was allegedly selling cigarettes, which he had none on him on the street, which you should never die for that. And he was choked to death by a police officer in this country. And that, as much I respect the police and I love what they do, and there are so many good ones out there, but there are ones out there who overreact and who do not act in the right way and are not doing the job with the right intentions, which I have zero respect for. So, and it's just another example of the societal issues that, and a reality that we have to face in this country as a whole, as a people. So, and I am going to read one more because I could not choose, and his poetry, this piece spoke to me in a personal way. It's called Father's Hands, so I'm going to go ahead and read this one next. This one really meant a lot to me, and I could not choose, and I know his poetry speaks for itself, so I'm going to go ahead and show him some love with this piece as well. Touchstone_1, once again, this is called Father's Hands. As I look at my own, I am reminded of his large and brown-like oversized catcher mitts, palms the feel of soft grain leather at least. That's what I remember. The distance between his thumb and index finger might as well have been forever. You see, he left when he thought I was too little to miss him. Mama never told me, I never asked, so I would borrow the hands of others until I could know his hands to hold onto my first day of school, steady my bike while learning to ride, tie my first tie, hand me keys to my very first car, shake my hand when I became a man. Hands that would hug me just because he loved me. I swore to myself I would be different, but I am my father's son. And this piece was heartbreaking, touching, raw, and honest. And I will say this, Preston is the truth. He is the truth. I mean, this piece jumped out at me because I recognize every last line. I am doing my best as a father. I had zero, and I mean zero, guidance on how to be a father, and I am not perfect, and I am getting it wrong in some ways, I know, and I am going through a lot myself these past week, and a lot of realizations in that regard. My kids are still little, and I am doing my best to break that chain, to break that cycle in my family and in anyone who needs help in theirs. So, but this piece, again, speaks for itself, and Preston is the truth. So please check out his accounts. They are at Touchstone1 and at, let me double check that. I don't want to say the wrong handle, but I just had it. It is at Fred E. Freeloader. So do check those out. And you can find them through my page as well on Instagram. So, all right. So that was Preston, and I thank Preston as well for allowing me to read him. He is an incredible, incredible man. All right. So with that, I am going to move on to my third person I am featuring, and this woman here. If there was a picture of strength in the dictionary through hard times, both within oneself and within one's family, her face would belong there with, I'm sure, many others. But I want to read, she posted a picture of herself, Danielle.Summer author. And I want to share the caption it says, because this speaks volumes to who she is as a woman and as a person and as a human being. The caption says, I listen more than I speak. I care more about the broken than I do the fake. Sometimes I cry in my sleep, but I'm never weak. I wake up every morning with an illness no one can see, but it makes me the compassionate person I continue to be. For me and so many others, smiling is a victory. And I read this and I just sat there staring at it, almost in tears. I'm almost crying now, because I felt every word of that. And I hate to make it about myself, but I have to, I just like to relate to the pieces, and this is one this caption I relate to in so many ways, and smiling is a victory to me, because I am told, and it's true, that I don't smile a lot, and I always have a grumpy look on my face, and I just can't help that. Sometimes I'm not in the best of mindsets, but I am doing things to make that right, and Danielle is one of many people who have inspired me to seek the right kinds of help, no matter the stigma that may be attached to it, and her strength. And reading these pieces, and just I've seen her live and I've heard her story. I'm not going to tell the whole story because it's not my place, but her poetry speaks for itself as well. I'll speak on it a little bit too. She is just incredible. She epitomizes what it means to rise up when it feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. She's battled her own issues with mental health, which she's very open about, and has been a personal inspiration for me. As I said, her openness with it is, it's encouraging, and her love for her family is incredible. She helped to take care of her mom while she battled cancer, and she did that with her head held high and with the honor her mom, I know, is proud of. She was also open and willing to share her personal story, which is very, very important, because I think that helps a lot of people, and I know it helps someone within, which I'm sure within the community, in which I'm sure it did. Then her dad was, he was able to open up to her about his issues with, I'm assuming, bipolar disorder, and it's especially important to me in that regard, because right now I'm going through some similar experiences, and that means a lot to me, because knowing that he was able to overcome it, and she recognized it and was helpful, and I don't have all the words, and but she was helpful to him, and he felt comfortable with her. It gives me hope that if my kids ever feel that way, that they could come to me, and kind of encourages me to go to my family, my wife especially, who is one of my rocks that I go to. She is the person I lean on heavily, and a lot more heavily than sometimes I even realize. And so anyway, Danielle, she offers so much inspiration to me, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So I want to read a couple pieces by her. This first one is let's see. I want to kind of get this right here. I want to read part of her caption, maybe the whole thing. Let's go. This is the caption. It says, sorry about not being all good vibes lately. It's difficult watching your favorite person dying of cancer and being the sole caretaker and not knowing what the hell you're doing and no one to go to for real help. I'm not going to read any more because that's her personal page. I know it's public, but I'll let people go there and read that if they want, out of respect to Danielle. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and read this first piece, and this piece is dedicated or written in regards to her mother and the situation she went through with battling cancer. I see you, but you're looking through me. I need you. Can you hear me? You're fading back to sleep again. It's okay. I'll be right here when you wake. People ask me how you're doing. What do I say? That you're doing great and I'm not afraid. I'm a writer, not a liar, so I don't say anything. You're still asleep, but I'm wide awake. Is this how it'll be when you leave? sitting here alone, writing about how close we used to be, praying I'll get a hold of you again someday. And the emotion and the way she wrote this too, it's like a poetic letter to her mother and to her feelings and to how she's feeling and what she's going through. And she's just asking a question, obviously rhetorical. But I know there are places out there for help with these types of things. I know there are people out there who can relate and understand, and I know she knows that. But they are hard to find, and that's the sad part. They are hard to find, but the strength she conveys. I'm gonna read a little more of her caption. I'm not gonna read it. Okay, so she had made an oncologist appointment, and she shed a lot of tears. And if you ever had to endure this, I'm sorry. If anyone has advice that's not about praying for a miracle or drinking some pure magic potion or Googling answers, but actually know how to get through something like this and what to prepare for when your loved one is going to die, but you cannot exactly know how, or at the very least proven ways to make them not suffer as bad, I'm all ears. I'm not the type to ask for anything from anyone, but I'm posting about it on IG. I'm in desperate need of somebody that knows something that can help me. And I know so many people had reached out to her to talk to her, to offer whatever they could. I could never know what it was like, what she went through. I have never had to deal with something like that, and I hope I never do, and I hope nobody ever does. And I hope we find an answer to cancer. But her willingness to be completely open and honest about this, and then speaking openly and honestly, when I read this, I broke down. I just broke down. I was in tears. And Danielle has a way of conveying messages so beautifully, so eloquently, and being so personal and willing to be open is something I am absolutely grateful for. She's just incredible. So, and the other piece I'm going to read, I did speak about her father, and I'm going to read that. And so as far as this piece goes, the caption says, as parents, we try to protect our kids from the not so pretty parts of life. My dad just recently admitted something wasn't right, which I had already known since I was a little girl. I knew because I silently went through the same things he did. One of the main reasons I wrote my book was to show my dad that it's not his fault. He has bipolar, and he is bipolar. And that I know he didn't purposely pass it on to me. I want to set his guilt free and let him know I'm happy to be me, and I'm proud of him for getting up every day, struggling to do what some consider ordinary things. I need him to know how I love him, and his strength carries me. He pushes me to tell others' story, to help others who are living a similar one. Happy Father's Day to all the good dads out there. And another piece that really brought tears to my eyes when I read this, so beautiful, so beautiful. And even her hashtags, I'll read a couple. Father's Day, my dad, my hero, proud to be his daughter, my strength, I love him, father and daughter. I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful piece to her father. And she does share photos of herself with her father, and him on his motorcycle, which is cool. But again, this is Danielle.summer.author, and I'll read this piece that is to her father. I didn't understand why he woke up every morning, slipping into a disguise. The nervous quirks, the restless footsteps pacing through the night. My innocent mind couldn't wrap itself around what it was too afraid to find. He didn't want to believe that my eyes reflected the same demon that he held inside. It took some time for him to realize that all those things he tried to hide were the very things that made me smile. Not all heroes wear a shiny badge. The one I know wears an illness the world will never understand. But I'm proud of everything he is and everything I am. Bipolar means nothing compared to the love I have for my dad. And Danielle, I would probably cry for a week if my daughter had ever written something this beautiful in the future to me. And I know your dad appreciates this piece. I have no doubt in my mind. even as I'm sitting here, I'm kind of getting a little teary-eyed, and um, I respect you for this, and I respect you for sharing so much of your life. I do. Um, it's hard to read this because I too battle with a severe depression and a severe anxiety, um, and I've been going through that very heavily the last week or so, and it's just refreshing to read this and know that I'm not alone. So I do appreciate that. And one thing I did not mention yet, she does have a book. It is available on Amazon, and it's called Unseeable Me, and I wanted to get that out there, shouted out before I forgot, because I would feel terribly if I did forget. But you can get that link in her bio or search her name in Amazon itself. That is at danielle.summer.author. An absolutely amazing woman. All right, and with that, I have one more person I'm reading today. This is my brother, not in the literal sense, but in every other way. This man is, he's an incredible man. He doesn't know it. Maybe he does and doesn't want to see it. I don't know. But I talk to him quite often, and I respect that a lot of him. Okay, so this is at brian.edwards.live, and a few things he does on Instagram, which it seems like everything. I don't know where he finds the energy or the time, but I respect the hell out of it. He reads live from his own account. He also he is a co-founder of Poets Anonymous with myself and a few other people. I'll get to them at some point within the podcast. I know Tara Nicole Wrights is one of them. At Esretic Dar is another. Myself at Joe Steele 401. My wife at lockedinside_my mind, and at Zillion Poetry, and at Girl the Poet. Well, all of us are Poets Anonymous, and we are a family within that group, and as family gets. Another thing, he is a co-founder of BYBT Poetry Support. He also helps me with my page as much as he can, which is at Rage Room Poetry. He also helps with Elfchin Anonymous, and he does lives, and some of them are specialized, one of them being Pin It, another one Soundcheck, which is an open mic style of live where he reads and he hosts a live where other people who are anxious about doing a live on Instagram where they would read live on their poetry will come on and read. And he does Friday nights live from the Poets Anonymous account with Sandra, which is at Esretic Dar. And he does other lives impromptu, scheduled as a guest. Doesn't matter, he'll go on a live at any chance he can. He loves it, he's great at it, he's an excellent host, an excellent man, and he's shown so many people in this community how to do lives, how it works, and so many other things. And so I am truly grateful to this guy, and I talk to him on a regular basis because, like I said, he's my brother. So with that being said, the piece I'm reading by him, the first one anyway, is Monsters Are Like That Sometimes. And so here goes. That's the beauty of sobriety. She'll wake up in the morning with no memory as to why all of his I love yous ended up in her love me not box. Dandelions are like that sometimes, breaking clocks inside young girls' hearts, stopping time from ticking so they can stay daddy's little girl forever, long before he ever gets the chance to become her monster. I bet you didn't know that dandelions were also known for stealing wishes, so they don't get wasted on first date kisses because they know firsthand that the anticipation will be overrated. All they want to do is save you from their inevitable delusion, since there was no one there to save them when it happened to them a long time ago. Other times you'll find them outside preaching suicide to every caterpillar passing by. This way they won't set their expectations too high before every little girl has to face the curse of becoming beautiful, just like the rest of the oblivious butterflies. They do it so you won't wake up when you're older in an empty bed with the only one keeping you company is an indentation and the scent of, what the fuck did I just do? Dandelions are generous like that too. But then there's the beauty of rainy days. So maybe if he keeps saying, I love you, baby, long enough, her love me not box will overflow. Maybe then she'll know when she picks one up that the villain she so desperately needs him to be right now is actually the good guy protecting her from the truth, keeping her safe from all the lies that he hopes to someday sanitize. Until then, he continues to love her unconditionally. Monsters are like that sometimes. In this piece, Brian is a fairly private guy. He did allow me to do read pieces of his and feature him and share his work on this podcast. So I am, because I really wanted to. But this piece, it was obvious to me, and I hope it's obvious to anybody who had read this. This was dedicated to his daughter and a little bit of everybody's daughter, but specifically his daughter. And so many great lines in this piece. The beauty of sobriety. She'll wake up in the morning with no memory as to why all of his I love yous ended up in her I love me not box. And I'll get to that, the other side of that, in the last stanza. But so many great parts of this. So to me, this piece was about a father and his daughter, and he having to be the bad guy sometimes, and her not understanding that he's not really the bad guy, but he's trying to teach her and show her the ways of the world, so that when her heart is broken, and it will be broken eventually, there's just no getting around it, that she is able to and capable of handling it in the best possible way. And he uses dandelions in such a brilliant way, because to me sometimes dandelions are a forgotten flower, considered a weed, but they are a flower. And just so many great parts of this poem. In the second stanza, I bet you didn't know dandelions are also known for stealing wishes too, so they don't get wasted on first date kisses, because they know firsthand that the anticipation will be overrated. To me, that's speaking to, it's why you almost never fall in love on a first date with a first love as a teenager, with a love that lasts anyway. I'm not saying it never happens, but generally it doesn't. It's because they want to save you from the inevitable delusion, he says in his piece, or inevitable disillusion, since there was no one there to save them when it happened to them a long time ago. So it's almost as if the dandelion, the wish, is the father himself. So like it's like a metaphor in a way. And then in the third stanza, other times you find them outside preaching suicide to every caterpillar passing by. That line right there just blew my mind. Because they're, preaching suicide to every caterpillar passing by. Because when you're young, you don't know how beautiful you are. And as you get older, you start to realize what true beauty is. So when you're young, they're trying to convince you you're not, hoping that you'll just destroy yourself before you can ever really love who you are and be who you are. And in the very next line, this way they don't set their expectations too high before every little girl has to face the curse of becoming beautiful, just like the rest of the oblivious butterflies. And I'm like right there, as I just said, just such a great follow-up line. It just leads you through an imagery that is just off the charts. And in the next line, they do it so they don't wake up when you're older in an empty bed with the only one keeping you company is an indentation and the scent of, what the fuck did I just do? And it's like, to me, it speaks to a one-night stand type of thing, like where you're always stuck in that same repetitive cycle of one-night stands, and he doesn't want that. Then the last stanza, but then there's the beauty of rainy days. So maybe if he keeps saying, I love you, baby, long enough, her love me not box will overflow. Back to the first stanza where, the love me not box, and the father is the monster, but not really. But he's having to play that part because he's trying to teach his little girl about growing up and what the real world is like. And she's not quite understanding it yet because she has to learn it on her own. And he's trying to give her tidbits and nuggets of information that she can go back to subconsciously, even to help her understand and cope and get through heartbreak, and whatever else the world may throw at her. Because then he says, maybe then she'll know when she picks one up that the villain she so desperately needed him to be right now is actually the good guy, protecting her from the truth, keeping her safe from all the lies that he hopes to someday sanitize. So someday he knows, he hopes that she'll come back to him, to talk to him, to open up to him, and he can clean up some of the mess and, kind of clean up some of his messages, and she'll understand them, and they can, and he can be on a, just continue the growth with his relationship with the daughter. And then, but until then, he continues to love her unconditionally. Monsters are like that sometimes. So the monster, in a sense, isn't necessarily a monster. He's just playing the part. And that piece is just beautiful. And I know his daughter just a little bit through Instagram and like that. But the little bit I do know her, she's a lot like him. And I know she'd hate that if she heard me say that, and that's okay. I'm not going to say her name out of respect to privacy to Brian and his family, but she is a wonderful young lady, and he is a fantastic father, and I hope to be half the father he is someday. So thank you for that, Brian, because that helps me a lot. And I am going to read one more by Brian. And the reason I'm doing that is because I read one he wrote for his daughter, and he wrote one for his son as well. And I think this piece is a little longer, but I'm going to read the caption. And if you hear noise in the background, that is my kids. Like I said, I am struggling with quietness around here. I don't get it, so I do apologize for that. But anyway. In the caption, he says, excuse all the typos, and it took a lot to finish this. Anybody who knows Brian knows why. Brian is a perfectionist. I knew that. I picked up on that from the very beginning when I met him. So anyway, the caption says, several weeks ago, my kids went through their very first death. He was a great man who was a huge positive influence in their lives, who loved very dearly, and they set an example of who a grandfather should be. As sad as it was for all of us, the good news is that my kids and I got to have some very deep conversations about life and death. Not too long ago, I wrote a poem about my mom. Not that I ever intended to write about my dad, but something my son said to me made me flash back to when my father passed away. I wrote this to my son in memory of my father. I didn't realize how much was buried inside of me until I began writing this. I hated my father growing up, but I didn't know it until after he died that my father broke the cycle of abuse on his side of the family. Thank you, Dad. As I get older, I realize now that you taught me more than ever than I could ever imagine. All right. So this is, again, to Brian's son. Again, I will not say his name out of respect to Brian and his family. My son, my favorite son, my only son, my mini-me. We need to talk. It's time. It's long overdue. No one's ever really ready for something like this, but it's going to happen to all of us someday, including you. But before I say what needs to be said, I want to share with you the day that I became a man so you'll understand what it is that I'm preparing you to do. But first, allow me to premise this with this. As you know, I am the youngest of 5, and my oldest brother always took care of everything. He was the one who said pulling the plug on my mom was the right thing to do, that she was brain dead, that the only thing keeping her alive was the machines. I had no desire to understand why or what was really going on. I was happy in denial. All I knew was it wouldn't be long before she would be gone, leaving me far behind, never getting to say goodbye or I love you ever again. So with that being said, I remember walking into your grandfather's house. That's when I found him, on the floor, next to the table that he swore to me that he was drinking himself to death on, just so he could be with my mom. He missed her more than the word depressed could ever express. I yelled at him to get up. Nothing. He didn't listen. Neither did I especially when I almost told him how much I hated him for not being a father whenever I needed him at the most. Beer and whiskey were his 2 best friends. They may have filled his belly, but that fueled my rage. But just then, as my hatred started to rise, I witnessed him beginning to cry. That's when he confessed to me that he wanted to die so he could be with your grandmother. I spent a lifetime waiting to say, "Go fuck yourself, Dad," but something inside me diverted my mind, and I found myself forgiving him instead. He didn't change that day. I did. I loved him. He was my dad. Little did I know that 2 months later I'd be the one who would find him dead. I tried to wake him. Nothing. I checked for a pulse. Empty. I contemplated giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but my opposition to the thought of tasting old man bear breath left me nauseous. Please forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I very much doubt that I'll ever forgive myself, because maybe I could have saved him that day, but once I realized that rigor mortis had already set in, is when I realized how pissed he would have been had I did. As soon as the coroner left, taking away the shell of a man who my father used to be, is when I realized that 2.5 years ago that day was when your grandmother had passed away. That's when it hit me that she was really dead, that she was never coming back again, just like him, just like my dad. I cried. I never cried like that before, and then I cried again. But I knew there was something more that I still needed to do. Hidden inside a dresser drawer, my father placed something that I had wanted to ignore. He handwrote a note, a list that listed step by step of what to do next and who to call after his wish came true to be with my mother. That was the moment I earned my rite of passage, the day I took care of my father, making arrangements to lower him into the ground instead of him raising me up over a lifetime. That's the day my son, my favorite son, my only son, my mini-me, that I became a man. Now that you're older, and as you know, I'm not getting any younger, I realize now that I'm starting to face my mortality, so it's time to do for you what my father did for me. I'll take it easy on you and type up this list, since everyone knows that including I can't even read my own handwriting. Seriously though, buddy, I love you and your sister more than the word unconditional can ever express. And just in case I haven't told you lately, I'm proud of you, my son, my not so mini me, because you've grown up to become a magnificent man. And that was Brian.Edwards.live, and he finds a way. I hope to grow to be the man he is. I've told him this personally, and I'll say it on this podcast. He finds a way to brilliantly tie so many beautiful things, so many hard truths, so much reality into poetry, and be wide open. And I respect and love the hell out of him, and that he wrote this in memory to his father, a little bit to himself, in my opinion, but especially to his son. This is just another piece that speaks for itself. It's hard to put into words after reading that how beautiful it is, and to sit here and break it down. I don't need to. It's not necessary. There are poets and poems like that where you break it down, you kind of explain your take on it, but this one's pretty much cut and dry. And it's brilliantly done, brilliantly written, and I hope to be the man he is someday, and he may not believe that, but in many ways I do. I think he's one of a kind, and I appreciate him so much, as well as everybody I've read today, especially. I mean, just so many different influences in my life and different appreciations for people, and that's the big thing about this, is that I appreciate people, and I love the people within the community, and I love featuring them, sharing them, reading them. I read them live on Instagram whenever I can, and I'm glad to do it here, and I'm finally, using this platform for something I'm passionate about, which I'm grateful for. So anyway, once again, you can find these people all on Instagram. Their handles are at brian.edwards.live, at danielle.summer.author, at touchstone_1, and at dreadful artist. So thank you all for listening. I hope you made it through. I hope you guys have a great day. And if you're a writer, keep writing. And if you're not, give it a shot, because It is a wonderful way of expressing oneself and getting things out, even if you never show it to anybody, which I never used to, but I hope you do someday. Anyway, this has been the 401 podcast. This is the third episode, and I appreciate all of you so much for listening. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great week. I will be back very soon with another episode. Have a great one.